London's heritage begins with a reminder that the current scene, and the period we now refer to as heritage, had the humble horse as its precursor. Horse-drawn buses were introduced to London in 1829. By 1832 they were even allowed to pick up passengers on the street, and by the time the first large petrol engine appeared in 1903, there were thousands of four-legged buses clogging the capital streets, and thousands of people following behind to collect free manure for their rhubarb. So Londoners probably had mixed feelings when a petrol engine was bolted into the gap left by the horse. For most it meant an improvement to the environment, and no more of that awful clippity-clop waking them up at the crack of dawn. For the professional manure operatives or crossing sweepers, it meant a retraining course or unemployment. One of the earliest petrol types still running today is the London Transport Museum's 1920K type, number 424. You will notice more than a passing resemblance to the previous horse bus, endorsing my theory of a straight substitution of horsepower and very little else in the way of development. Development came later, before and after the Second World War, producing all manner of famous London types you'll be seeing in this programme. Here, despite the route number, is the K running through the streets of Walthamstow during the AEC centenary event at the local museum in June 2012. At the entrance, the K comes face to face with the ultimate London icon, which is very convenient for us because the original Routemasters are where we plan to start. As the title implies, this section focuses on the 27-foot 6-inch buses dating back to the 1950s and 60s. This is RM1 at a wet and windy Wisley in April 2012, looking like one of the production fleet again. This bus also belongs to the LT Museum collection. The first of the production buses numerically, RM5, shows off its beautifully restored engine at the same event. One of the Reaver's heritage fleet, RM5 has been restored to near original condition since it worked its last journey on Route 38 in October 2005. Stablemate RM6 is still carrying the gold paint applied for the Queen's Golden Jubilee in 2002. Here it's arriving at Showbus in September 2011. RM8 was the first of the production buses to be completed in 1958, but spent its early years as a test rig at Chiswick before entering fare-paying service in 1976. It's now owned by the RM8 Club and took part in the centenary bash at the Walthamstow Pump House. Where it also came face to face with RM9. Which now sets off on a tour of the neighbourhood. Go Ahead retained this one for the commercial services fleet after it worked its final days on routes 36 and 22 in 2005. RM9 has led an interesting existence. In London Transport days it was used as a trainer at several garages, as well as spending long periods in store. Along with all the body swaps during routine overhauls, it also ran with a Scania engine for a time before acquiring the current Cummins unit. So how much is left of the RM9 that AEC built in 1959 is anyone's guess. Maybe nothing. RM40 is owned by the RM40 Group and is here heading for the North Weald Show in July 2011. RM44 has enjoyed a varied career too. Another of the 1959 production batch, it lasted in London only until 1984, but later spent 2 years, from November 1991, working for Southend Transport. That was followed by 4 years in the Reading fleet, before semi-retirement beckoned in 2000. RM70 calls in on one of its previous owners, Metroline, at the company's Potters Bar Open Day in July 2012. RM298 is one of a dozen Routemasters operated today by the London Bus Company. LT sold it to a Scottish operator in 1986, but Blue Triangle repatriated the bus in 1994. Its restoration began in 2002. RM848 is also well travelled. Withdrawn in 1985, it headed to Blackpool, where it worked until 1994, before moving to Reading Main Line. The bus returned to London in 2000 and worked for London United and then Arriva before final withdrawal in October 2005. RM938 has travelled even further. After London it moved to Glasgow, but then made 3 trips to the Czech Republic. And it also spent time in Reading. This is the M11 turn-off for Duxford in September 2011. And this is a special lineup we organised there, along with the RM1000 group. The 1000th Routemaster stands next to London's 1000th Enviro 400. Two more of the North Weald lineup, but a year apart. RM1001 in July 2012, and RM62 the year before. This one is now owned by Newquay-based Western Greyhound. Returning to 2012, April, this is RM1063 arriving at the Faden Boys event. This one was preserved in 1990 after spending the 3 years since withdrawal with the Wickham Youth Council. RM1138 pulls onto the Duxford roundabout in September 2011. And here's 1368, which had its upper deck destroyed by fire in 1973 and was converted into this as an experimental vehicle in 1975. Private ownership beckoned in 1990. This is Wisley after the sun came out. RM1403 has had a much less drastic haircut. LT converted it to open top in 1984 for its new owners, Ind Coupe. The Brewers sold the bus to a preservationist in 1992, and since 2005 it's been with a private owner in Northampton. One of a handful of RMs still working daily in central London. First, RM1650, carrying the bonnet number SRM3. It was painted silver for the RM50 celebrations in 2004 and can usually be found on Heritage Route 9. Back at Walthamstow for AEC's Centenary Bash, we find RM1699. Like RM938, this one spent about 18 months with Magic Bus in Glasgow in the late 1980s. It was saved in 1990 and is now a regular attender of rallies in the Hertfordshire and Essex area. RM1804's claim to fame are visits to Dusseldorf in May 1964 and Copenhagen the following September. It joined MTL London in 1994 and still carries its GB sticker just in case. This silver number is Time Bus's RM1871, masquerading as SRM7. A recently repainted RM1933 arrives at Walthamstow. This is another daily worker on Heritage Route 15 for Stagecoach. RM1955 lasted until the final days of 2005. It went first to Ensignbus, but was snapped up for preservation within weeks. The Route 36 branding is authentic, as it finished its days as a new cross bus. RM1990 is another one that ended up with Reading Main Line and keeps its Reading colours in private ownership. This is Staines Station and the start of a return run to Slough during the May 2012 event. And by the way, it doesn't really give the taxi a nudge, it's an optical illusion. RM2116 looks very smart in its 1933 Forest Ranger colours, first applied in the last year of its LT service life in 1983. Not surprisingly, this one was preserved almost immediately after withdrawal in 1984. In the 1950s, London Transport's country area came up with this combination to replace the pre-war Leyland Cubs on the narrow twisty lanes routes. The Guy Special chassis topped off with a body design by Eastern Coachworks. 84 of them entered service in 1953-54. This is GS13 setting off from Slough on the annual running day. Later that day, the same bus passes the Curry House at Farnham Common while on a short trip from Slough to Burnham Beeches. This particular one was withdrawn in 1973 after it was used as a staff bus since 1968. When it wasn't in store, that is. GS42 has been a regular at rallies and shows since it was preserved in 1973. Here it's heading into the Brooklands site on the London Bus Museum's Autumn Running Day. GS32 at speed on its way to Duxford and arriving at the show. This one was put into store in December 1957 when it was only 4 years old, and it was later used as a shed and an office. Eventually somebody took pity and brought it back to life in 1998. From a few years earlier than the Guy, but looking much more modern, the one-off RFW variant of the country area coach. 15 of these were built in 1951 for private hire work and in time to be used at the 1951 Festival of Britain. RFW 14 climbs towards Weybridge Station in October 2011. They were wider than the regular RF at 8 feet and had little in common with the Regal 4 apart from sharing the designation. Because LT's statute at the time restricted the company to private hire work within its own London area, the RFWs provided no competition at all to private coach firms working long distance journeys. And as they weren't really suitable for short distance mass movement jobs either, they remained a bit of an anomaly. Withdrawals began in 1963, although 10 were exported to Sri Lanka and it was still called Ceylon. RFW 14 lasted until October 1964. It was saved for preservation 10 years later, joining the only other British survivor, RFW 6. Jumping forward nearly 20 years in LT time, we come across the AEC Merlin. 665 of these, in various combinations, were introduced in 1968 and 69. Their entry into service was delayed by protracted negotiations between the unions and London Transport on one-person operation, the so-called reshaping plan. This is MB90, one of a handful to have worked before the mass introduction of the type in September 1968. MB90's green livery immediately tells you it's one of the two-door country suburban Merlins, with more seats than the standing variant, so it looks perfectly at home here in Windsor. MB641 is a single-door central suburban variant. It entered service at Bromley in October 1969. With one-person operations still not agreed for double-deckers, the Merlins were put out on as many double-deck routes as possible, which must have delighted just about everybody. Numerous Merlins were withdrawn after only 4 or 5 years because the cost of refurbishing them was found to be excessive, so an expensive mistake all round. Some were sold on to operators outside London, and the cattle truck version working the short Red Arrow routes in central London lasted until 1981. MB641 was withdrawn in 1976 and preserved in 1980. The 90-strong fleet of AEC Reliance coaches with Park Royal bodywork was created at the end of 1971 to modernise the Green Line routes by replacing Routemaster coaches. Yes, it seems incredible now. The last of them, RP90, was allocated to Guildford Garage to work Route 715 to London and Hertford. Many RPs, including this one, were withdrawn in 1979, although a handful staggered on until the early 1980s. RP90 was sold for scrap, but bought for further use by Smiths of Reading. It was privately preserved in 1983. The next great idea was the Leyland National. Here's one of the shorter 10.3 metre variants, SMB 449. Performing at Brooklands. LS35 was one of the standard buses and originally built as part of an export order of 51 for Venezuela. When that was cancelled, London Transport stepped in and bought the whole batch. London eventually ended up with 437 of the type, so it could have been a lot worse. This is a much earlier Leyland product, the 1949 Leyland Tiger PS1, Central London's TD class. Number 95 arrives at the Potters Bar Open Day carrying a Ponder's End shed plate. From the same era, an AEC Regal 3 rounds off the section. T792 was built in 1948 and last worked for London Transport in 1960. Preservation beckoned in 1967, followed in recent years by this beautiful restoration. Ensignbus is based in these modern premises in Purfleet in Essex, right next to the high-speed 1 rail link. The company was first formed in 1972 to work small bus contracts, but it really took off in the early 1980s when it won a contract from London Transport to dispose of nearly 2,000 DMS buses. Most of those were converted to customer specs and sold on, both here and abroad, but the company continued to buy surplus London vehicles, as it does to this day. In later years, Ensign ran sightseeing tours in cities worldwide, as well as establishing a local bus service network in South Essex. What we're concerned with in this programme, though, is the heritage side of the business. If you want to hire a bus, this is the place to come. More than 30 vehicles are available, most for the London heritage, like the Routemaster, highly popular for weddings, or the older RT. The choice is staggering. The company also hires out an RT for a wartime tour around London 3 times a week, a job normally handled by RT8. Fancy an RLH perhaps, or an RF, or even the first MCW Metrobus M1. Whatever your preference, Ensign can deliver. Needless to say, working buses need regular maintenance. RM54 takes its place in the workshop alongside the local fleet. Like the best equipped garages of major bus operators, powerful lifting jacks make exams easier and quicker to carry out. The bus is thoroughly checked inside and out, and any damage immediately repaired. The mechanical check is very thorough too, as reliability is just as crucial in the private hire market as day-to-day bus operations. You don't want your wedding Routemaster breaking down outside the church. Behind the workshop, the restoration shed is especially fascinating. You will find some really interesting stuff in this area, like RMC 1513, recently acquired but currently needing a restored engine. RT 3232 is in for minor attention. This bus has been with Ensign since 1979 and was initially bought for film work. RMA 50 is also receiving minor repairs. It used to be number 34 in BEA's 65-strong fleet. Ensign kept the last of the Daimler Fleetlines for itself. Like the last 2 buses, DM2646 is now part of the heritage fleet, and when repairs have been carried out, will also be available for hire. There's no shortage of buses waiting their turn in the restoration queue. Unlike a preservation society, Ensign employs full-time staff to carry out this work. This trio comprises RT624, a runner until 2011 but now needing a refurbished engine and a general tidy up, STL 2093, preserved since 1958 and currently on a 20-year loan from the London Bus Museum. Records show its original part royal body was replaced in 1949 by the body from STL 2570. And finally in the trio, RCL 2226. After LT withdrew it from work in central London, the bus was sold for further use as a film catering vehicle, but came back into the fold, as it were, in 2006. RT4686 is in need of major restoration, as you can see. The RT on the left of the picture has defied all attempts at identifying it, but it hardly matters as it's slowly being dismantled for spares. Spares are also coming from this deck-and-a-half former BEA coach. This one hasn't been a coach for some time, but it has been a grocery shop and a caravan since leaving the airline. The BEA coach fleet obviously preceded the front entrance RMs, and they were always identified by registration numbers alone. The pass this one yields will be used to restore MLL 735, preserved in 1977 after 10 years as an LT uniform store. It appeared, surprisingly, on eBay in November 2006 and was immediately snapped up by Ensign. Newly delivered to the restoration shed, this refurbished AEC engine, probably for RT624. Switching genres to the Leyland version, this is RTL 1014. New and stricter emission laws in America, especially California, have resulted in the repatriation of numerous ex-London buses. This one was exported to Davis, California in 1967 and last ran in the US in 2007. Ensign bought it in January 2012 and it arrived here 2 months later via Southampton docks. Breakdown tender 739J has also returned recently, but from Florida. The vehicle was converted from STL 175 in 1950 and at the end of its London life bought privately and exported. Despite appearances, it does work and needs only bodywork restoration. Only, after suffering very badly in the Florida heat. These breakdown tenders were the precursors of the giant Sovereign trucks you see recovering London buses today. If you look closely, you can just make out that this one used to operate from Camberwell Garage. And the J suffix indicates that this used to be a Regent type. We end our look at Ensign though with a vehicle nearing completion, Leyland Cub number C4. The company bought it in 2007 and sent it away for specialist body repairs in the autumn of 2008. It returned here in 2010. Since then, a few mechanical snags have held up progress, but internally the Cub is almost complete and its engine only needs fine-tuning. With luck, it should be running again before the end of 2012. We begin the Regent types with the immaculately presented RT1. Well, its body anyway. Apparently the original chassis was dismantled after this body was mated with RT19's undercarriage in 1945. After a short period on an SRT STL chassis in 1954, body number 1 acquired the chassis from RT1420, which it retains to this day. So if you follow the usual convention, this is RT1420, which just happens to have the first built wartime body instead of the original Cravens. This combination entered preservation in 1978, then spent from 1983 to 1986 in the USA. By 1997 it was in store awaiting restoration and the work wasn't completed for another 9 years. In 2010, the recreation of RT1 was bought by the London Bus Preservation Trust and now resides in the new museum at Brooklands near Weybridge. In June 2012, the bus takes its place in the lineup at the AEC Centenary Show. RT8 was exported to the USA in 1961 until Ensign repatriated it in 2006. The return to working order followed in July 2010. Just over a year later, RT8 arrives at Showbus. As I mentioned earlier, you can regularly find this one in central London, working the London Wartime Tour. Another of the original batch of wartime RTs, RT131, heads for North Weald. Note the rear roof box, abandoned when post-war body production began. RT3062 had a Wayman body when new, but acquired this Saunders roof box version in 1965. This one is operated by the London Bus Company and appeared in the 2006 film Atonement. The non-roof box version painted in the original Lincoln green of London Country. RT3254 was sold for scrap in 1979, but survived long enough to be bought for preservation in 1983. The very light green is from the National bus period, after the country operations split from London Transport in 1970. Body-wise, RT604 was another Wayman product when new, with roof box, but records show it received 4 non-roof box bodies during its working life. It was preserved in 1980. Although this one is numbered RT2083, the chassis is RT2084. The body, of course, is neither. This is Potter's Bar in July 2012. 2 months earlier, 2083-2084 appeared at the Slough Running Day and worked a road trip to the old entrance of Pinewood Studios, where it paused for a quick photo stop. So, lights, camera, action! RT3491 also began life with a Wayman body, but ended its London days in 1968 with this Park Royal. A spot of manoeuvring at Brooklands during the October 2011 running day. This one was preserved as long ago as 1973, but has been fairly active since the start of the new millennium. Some read all over now. RT4317 arrives at Duxford, one of more than 370 RTs still believed to be in existence from a total build of 4,825. So that's about 7.5%. RT3775 with the Park Royal body it's had since 1964. Ditto RT3871, but since 1967. Both were originally Waymans when built. This one was bought by Blue Triangle in 1979 and sometimes appeared on the company's regular services and other last day runs in London. It's now owned by the London Bus Company. This one is quite rare, one of the very few to have retained the same Park Royal body throughout its working life. But the clue is that it's well travelled. RT 1702 spent the summer of 1950 on a European tour of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Holland, Belgium, Luxembourg, West Germany and France. So naturally a GB sticker can be found on the back, even though it's holidayed in Britain ever since. Usually as a matter of course, Alderman Works tried to keep the foreign travellers together in terms of chassis and body. Staying with the travelling RTs, RT 2775 spent almost half of 1952 touring the United States and Canada, along with RT 2776 and RTL 1037, trying to drum up trade for the old country. Restoration to the condition in which it made its epic 12,000 mile trip has taken 15 years at the London Bus Museum. RT 1798 arrives at the Detling Showground. This one started out as a Park Royal and finished up as a Wayman in 1965. It was withdrawn in 1979 and preserved the same year. RT 2688 worked out its days at Bromley until 1976, whereupon withdrawal and preservation followed in quick succession. Here's another rarity. RT 4139 has had the same Wayman body all its life. This one was allocated to Wandsworth Garage when withdrawn in 1972, and in the modern world regularly visits events in and around Kent. As far as we know though, it's never been abroad, so keeping the same body makes it even rarer. RT 2993 arrives at Northweald Airfield in July 2012. This one had 3 Wayman bodies in its working life and survived in London service until 1978. I hope you're appreciating the obvious care and attention lavished on all these buses. Like the RMs, several RTs have had the haircut for some higher purpose. RT 3435 is now operated by the London Bus Company. But our final RT shots is the lovely RT 1702 again, doing some rounding at Brooklands. Numerically, the RF is the largest preserved single-deck class at over 110. In percentage terms, survivors against original build, it may be the largest of all. I'll have to get back to you on that. In this opening shot, 4 of them do the Brooklyn Shuffle. The green one is RF 146, a modernised Green Line coach, followed by RF 326. Then it's the turn of RF 429 to turn. With those 3 out of the way, RF 366 can turn and head off with its shuttle service. RF19 was one of 25 RFs built for the private hire fleet at the same time as the RFW we saw earlier. These also featured coach-style bodies and panoramic glass. RF19 was one of 10 later transferred to London Country. A brief glimpse of another of this variant, RF4, in the original colour combination. RF673 was delivered new to East Grinstead in 1953, one of a batch of 187 built for London Country. It was withdrawn from High Wycombe in 1976 and preserved at the end of 1977. RF315 was one of the extra capacity buses built for the central area. So originally it would have been red, hence you may assume it acquired this green in preservation. RF600 is pretty much original. Another of the country buses, its withdrawal in 1971 was followed by 3 years with private operators, before preservation in 1975. RF539 arrives at Thaden Boys. This country bus was withdrawn in 1972 and spent the next 6 years with a scout group. It's had many owners since. The most recent bought it in 2007. RF539 escapes from the Thaden Boys Village Hall car park on a trip to Epping Underground Station. RF226 was originally built for Green Line, but operated out of garages all over London. Starting out at Grays, it was later allocated to Tring, Swanley, Reigate, East Grinstead and Leatherhead, and survived in traffic until 1974. This one has also had several owners since it was preserved. The current owner bought it in 2009. RF146 was delivered new to Addlestone Garage for Green Line route 716. Like many others, it did the rounds of numerous garages before withdrawal at Windsor in 1977. 3 different schools owned the coach before it was finally preserved in 1987. RF489 was also bought by a school after withdrawal. This central London variant now resides in Kent, hence its appearance at the Maidstone and District 2012 show at Detling. RF518 went straight into preservation after withdrawal in 1978. RF354 went new to Merlin in 1952. By the time of withdrawal in December 1977, it was at Kingston. Its latest owner is the 354 Restoration Group, who, as you can see, have done a fabulous job with it. Ensignbus is the latest of 7 owners of RF319 since withdrawal in 1976. It's been in the Heritage Fleet since November 2011. RF401 was initially bought for preservation after withdrawal by LT, but acquired by Blue Triangle, who used it for a short time in service. It's now part of the London Bus Company fleet. RF486 is very active, often found at rallies and shows all over the home counties. Here it's giving rides at the London Bus Museum's October 2011 running day. RF503 takes part in the AEC Centenary Parade past the Walthamstow Pump House Museum. This one has changed ownership 4 times since 1978. The TfL Commissioners RF326 runs alongside the Mercedes-Benz World Skid Pan at Brooklands in October 2011. But we end the section back at the Slug, as the new Slough bus station has been christened by local residents. RF406 looks a little out of place, but then so does everything else. This one has also been very active in the new millennium and can often be found at bus rallies and running days all around the London area. The reopening of the Epping to Ongar Railway in May 2012 produced a bonus for the bus enthusiasts as well as the railway kind. The railway operates over former London transport track from Ongar to North Weald and onwards towards Epping as far as Coopersale. The eventual plan is to reconnect at Epping. The driving force behind the project is Roger Wright, former owner of Blue Triangle and now head of the London Bus Company. To make sure it got noticed, the railway kicked off with some big locos, Pitchford Hall and a pannier tank running alongside a Class 37 and this Class 31. North Weald Station is the main hub with a regular service in both directions. And in typical railway fashion, because the railway can't reach Epping, it runs a replacement bus service to connect with the underground network. A half-hourly shuttle runs most weekends between Epping and North Weald, generally with RTs. On this occasion, in August 2012, RT 1700 sets off from Epping Station. The run to North Weald provides plenty of photographic opportunities. This is RT 1700 in the woods just north of Epping, not to be confused with Epping Forest, which is southwest of the town. On the return journey, the bus passes the North Weald Airfield Memorial. Two RTs generally turn out each weekend. This is RT 3781 heading out of North Weald. RT 1700 arrives at North Weald Station. And RT 3781 sets off on another journey to Epping. In the afternoons, some bus runs are extended to Ongar. RT 1700 heads that way and also passes the bizarre supercar built by apprentices at Chiswick Bus Works. The front portion is constructed from half of DMS 1515. At Ongar, the RT has just picked up passengers for the return to Epping. Later in the day, RT 1700 heads into Ongar village after setting down at the railway. It continues along the High Street if you're planning a visit to photograph this attractive spot. So whatever your interest, buses, trains, the English countryside or photography in general, the Epping to Ongar Railway is well worth a visit. One ticket lets you travel on both bus and train, and further details of operating days and times are available from the website eorailway.co.uk. This section features London double-deckers which aren't RTs or regular RMs, which immediately sends your mind wandering towards the RLH class. 76 low-height Regents were built by AEC to save compromising with single-deckers on routes with low bridges. This is RLH 61, exported to Canada in 1971 but repatriated by Ensignbus in 2004. It's followed into Walthamstow by RLH 44, restored in its later guise of Mobile Uniform Store 581J. The 2011 Brooklands event also produced 2 RLHs. This is number 48, which spent time in Belgium and Switzerland in the 1980s. And here's RLH 23. Withdrawn from London in 1966, it's now in the Time Bus fleet. Meanwhile, back at Walthamstow, RLH 61 is about to take a tour of the local area. A large number of RLHs were exported to all parts of the USA, including Hawaii. But finding out which of them still exist is, well, challenging to say the least. This is RTW 185 at Wisley, one of 500 8 feet wide variants of the RTL built for London in 1949. We think there are only 8 others in Britain, because 279 of them went to Ceylon. A handful exist elsewhere, including one in use as a fish and chip shop in Ontario, Canada. Truly shocking. And now a mini section devoted to the short version of the Routemaster coach. 68 of the RMC class were built for Green Line. In the main, they were standard RMs, but with modifications like rear platform doors. Although they were fitted with a similar engine, it was geared differently to enable running at higher speeds. Deeper upholstery and more space between each row of seats increased passenger comfort. This is RMC 1476 in the later London Country Green. RMC 1507, however, looks pretty much original, including authentic green line blinds. RMC 1461 with temporary bus blinds for the Wisley shuttle. At privatisation in 1994, this bus passed the stagecoach and later operated in Wales as well as in London on Route 15. It was donated to the London Bus Museum in 2003. RMC 1497 arrives at Potter's Bar for the 2011 Open Day. A year later, RMC 1486 pokes its nose into the Potter's Bar shed. This one was repatriated from Germany. Arriva's RMC 1464 has been open-topped. This is one of 31 surviving RMCs, so I'm about to award the RM coach the percentage prize. Not all of them are in Britain though. Some do promotional work in Europe. One is a pizza restaurant in France, and another is also a mobile fish and chip shop. In Spain, of course. Back to the Leyland powered RT now, or RTL if you prefer. 1,631 of these were built, with a range of manufacturers providing the bodies. This one has Park Royal coachwork. It was exported to the US after withdrawal, but repatriated by the London Bus Company in 2010. RTL 139, captured here in Windsor, was exported to the Netherlands Bus Museum, but returned in 1998 to the former Cobham Museum. Roughly half of the original RTL fleet ended up overseas, including an amazing 728 in Ceylon alone, and a more modest 14 in Jersey. The sole surviving Chiswick-built roof box STL 2377, housed at the London Bus Museum. Built in 1937, it lasted in London service until 1954. Moving forward several decades and onto a different planet, we have the 1970 Daimler Fleetline. DMS 2357 went into service in 1977 and worked until 1991. It was later sold to a private operator before preservation beckoned. This is a spot of shunting at Sagan Boys to enable classmate DMS 1426 to escape from the car park. 1426 ended its days as a trainer before being sold in 1993 to Blue Triangle. Preservation was quite recent, in 2007. Winding back 9 months, 1426 appears again on its way to the North Weald gathering. DM 1052 attended the same event. This was one of many to pass through Ensign in 1983 before heading to Pastures New. It returned to Pastures Old and Preservation in 1999. The final shot in the not RT and not regular RM section shows 1426 setting off from Potter's Bar Garage on a mini tour to South Mimms. We round off the Routemasters with the especially numerous RML class. Here's 2364, 2306 and 2371 heading for Duxford. RML 2735 in Walthamstow. The reason for the great number preserved is that many of the type ran right until the end of the Routemasters' reign in London, not least because they had the extra capacity provided by the additional slice inserted in the middle. The extra bay provided another 4 seats on each deck, but increased the overall length of the bus by 2 foot 6 inches, which can sometimes make manoeuvring a challenge. Reva's RML 2366 was in action on the final day of regular Routemaster operation in London on the 9th of December 2005 and still appears to be wearing the same paint. RML 2750 survived until October of 2005 when Route 38 was converted from crew operation. A private owner bought it from Ensignbus in April 2006. Stagecoach withdrew RML 2272 after a crash in April 2003. It was bought by Sullivan Buses, quickly repaired and put to work on rail replacements before the year was out. RML 2620 was operated by MTL and then Metroline, and was one of the RMs painted gold for the Queen's Jubilee in 2002. RML 2699 was another Metroline bus and ended its London days working routes 6 and 98 from Wealdstone Garage in 2004. RML 897 also worked the 38. Originally, it was one of the experimental batch of 24 so-called extended Routemasters introduced in 1961, 4 years before the bulk of the longer buses. RML 2740 from the last build batch entered service in 1967. It was in First Group's London fleet when withdrawn from Route 7 in 2004. RML 2516 now works for Travel with Honey and is here providing wedding transport in Windsor. Confusion exists between this bus and DRM 2516 in the Go-Ahead Commercial Services fleet, but the latter is, apparently, mostly RML 2283. The last of the ERM batch, RML 903, spent a month in the USA in 1963. After privatisation, it worked for Metroline, and the company has kept the bus in its fleet to this day. RML 2306, or at least the front A-frame of 2306. The rest of it has been constructed from RCL and RM parts. And RML doing the Thaden Boys shunt. 2589's final duty in London was on Tottenham's Route 73 in September 2004. It was bought for preservation later that month. RML 2463 ended its days with London United, working routes 9 and 94, but is here recreating East London Route 15. RML 2616 was once a stagecoach bus, withdrawn in August 2003. On its withdrawal, RML 2442 transferred to Bristol from First Centre West to work for railway company First Great Western. It was sold to Time Bus in 2008. RML 2412 spent most of the 1970s working for London Country after the fleet was divided, but returned to central London at privatisation to work for Go-Ahead's London Central Division. It survived in service until February 2005 and has reverted to Country guys in preservation. The same is true of RML 2323, except this one came back to central London to work for Arriva on Route 73. It was bought privately within a month of withdrawal and now sports the later National bus light green. RML 2456 also spent the 1970s hidden beneath green paint. Stagecoach last ran it in central London on Route 8. RML 2334 flirted with the countryside before a final fling as an Arriva 38. RML 2323 rounds off the section in the genuine Epping Forest during the 2012 Thaden Boys gathering. This final section is a collection of odds and ends that don't really fit anywhere else, but they're interesting in their own right. For example, here's some buses demonstrating the arts of running like buses. RT 3254 and RF 401 arrive at the Walthamstow Pump House and meet RLH 61. the all Routemaster version of the same phenomenon at North Weald. RM822, RML2613 and RM1000. A Le Mans style race off the line at Slough, RTL 139 and RML 2440. This fascinating display of styling evolution was organised at Wet Windy Wisley in April 2012. RM1 flanked by RT1 and LT1. Tree Pruner 971J was converted from STL 1470 in 1953 and spent 6 years lopping foliage in the St Albans area before withdrawal. It then spent 10 years as a caravan before preservation in 1973. Today it's owned by the London Bus Company and here waits for a gap in the North Weald traffic. Closely pursued by RT 3238 and RTL 1076. Shortly after, RF 539 and RML 2323 play to the camera by circumnavigating the roundabout for no reason whatever. At the Brooklands event, RP90 squeezes past BL49, making a timely appearance just as the programme is about to end. The RP heads back onto the road to provide another Weybridge Station shuttle and passes a couple of late arrivals. Although we've been able to bring you tremendous variety in the past 80 minutes, we've only scratched the surface of London's heritage. A rough calculation suggests there must be 1,000 London buses of this vintage still in existence. So we leave you with that thought as RLH 28 and RF 600 pass each other on the Brooklands site. I wonder what the chances are of getting a bus on that skid pan.